So is the United States going to take back the Panama Canal, as Trump has said he wants to do, or is this a forceful negotiating tactic from the Trump administration to elicit more favorable deals on the cost for the United States to transit the Panama Canal? Well, Trump recently sent a message on his Thread app calling for the Panama Canal to be in American hands or for more favorable conditions to be put in place for the United States. Now, this message unfortunately contained language similar to Putin's reasoning for taking Crimea in 2014. Trump's push for better terms or total control over the Panama Canal stems from several factors. First, economically, Trump criticizes high transit fees that hurt U.S. commerce. From a historical standpoint, Trump disparages the canal's handover as a blow to U.S. pride and leadership. Regarding global security, Trump warns of foreign influence, specifically pointing to China. Politically, such a move aligns with his America First agenda to renegotiate terms across the globe for U.S. advantage. Now, the idea of Trump wanting to reclaim control over the Panama Canal is, quite frankly, a tangled web of legal, diplomatic, and geopolitical complications. First and foremost, there is the matter of international law and binding treaties. The Torrijos-Carter Treaty, signed in 1970, clearly handed over control of the Panama Canal to Panama in 1999. These weren't just handshake deals. They were formal agreements ratified by both nations. But does that mean the president is unable to pull the United States out of the treaty? Well, unfortunately, no. Historically, presidents have unilaterally withdrawn from treaties without congressional approval. This practice has largely been upheld because Congress and the courts have abdicated any responsibility and have not consistently challenged the office of the president when such actions are taken. For the U.S. to go back on these treaties, though, it would not only violate international law, but set a dangerous precedent, one that could undermine trust in U.S. treaty commitments globally, and there are treaties that are very beneficial to the United States. Panama, for its part, has made it very clear the canal is their territory, their pride, and their responsibility. Panama's president, Jose Raul Molina, responded firmly to Trump's statements, saying the canal and its management are not up for debate, and he's not alone. His people are behind him. They view the Panama Canal as part of their national sovereignty. Trying to strong-arm them into relinquishing control would likely unify Panamanians against the United States, not to mention alienate allies across Latin America, driving them into the arms of China, Russia, and their janky BRICS alliance. From a diplomatic perspective, attempting to reclaim the canal would be a PR disaster globally. Latin America has a long history of U.S. interventionism, and this kind of move would only reinforce negative perceptions of the U.S. as an imperialist power. Frankly, it wouldn't make the U.S. any better than Russia taking Crimea. Such a move would strain relationships not only with Panama, but also with other countries around the globe, who might view this as a warning of what the U.S. could attempt to do elsewhere. Diplomacy relies on building trust and partnerships, not bulldozing through sovereign agreements. Then there's the geopolitical fallout. The Panama Canal isn't just a regional issue. It's a critical hub for global trade. Any disruptions caused by forceful or administrative changes in management could ripple through international shipping lanes, affecting economies worldwide, including the United States. It's also worth mentioning that Trump has raised concerns about potential Chinese influence over the canal. While it's true that Chinese companies have been involved in port management in Panama, the canal itself remains firmly under Panamanian control. This is much like the fear of China buying land in the United States. In times of crisis, that land is still within the U.S. borders and, if necessary, can be reclaimed to reject potential Chinese influence during a conflict. What is happening here is this issue is being framed as a crisis when it's not one. There is no evidence of it actually being a problem. And back in the United States, this idea really wouldn't fare much better. American public opinion probably wouldn't rally around a move that reeks of overreach and imperialism. Americans have admonished U.S. meddling in South America before. You only need to look at Guatemala in 1954, Chile in 1973, and Nicaragua during Iran-Contra in the 1980s, not to mention the decades-long war on drugs. It's one thing to criticize high canal transit fees and try to renegotiate from a position of power. Similarly, expressing concern over foreign influence is fair, but it's an entirely different situation to suggest taking something back by force, especially when it was willingly handed over decades ago. The cost, both financially and diplomatically, would be astronomical, with little to no upside. After all, the U.S. still gets to use the canal for transit right now. At its core, this proposal underestimates the complexity of global politics. Treaties aren't just suggestions, they're binding agreements. Sovereignty isn't something you can simply override because you don't like the terms of that agreement anymore. For almost 3 years, the US has hammered this point home because of what Russia is doing in Ukraine. The ripple effect of such a move would extend far beyond Panama, damaging the US's standing as a global leader and partner. What I'm hoping is happening here is that Trump is just trying to strong arm for a better negotiating position to drive fees down. The thing is, the Panamanian leaders know there's a lack of appetite for war within the American public, especially when it comes to a peaceful country that is generally considered an ally. The Panamanians are absolutely going to call Trump's bluff on this, and they largely already have. The idea of the US reclaiming the Panama Canal might be good for dramatic sound bites, but in reality it's impractical, fraught with obstacles, and entirely tone deaf to the complexities of modern international relations. It's a reminder that bold claims need to be tempered by a firm understanding of history, law, warfare, and diplomacy, none of which support this endeavor. But we'll see where this goes once Trump is inaugurated. I'd be very curious to see what the plan is exactly for taking back the Panama Canal.